But then we realized because we always go to Costco and we fill the freezer, well, now we have a deep freezer. So the issue wasn't so much are we filling the freezer for the weeks of use that we're going to have between now and when we go to Costco. Hey, YouTube, it took a minute for the thing to come together. But hi, glad to see y'all. But this week, so we didn't just want to fill the freezer for what we were going to regularly use from Costco. Because we now have a deep freezer, we also wanted to fill the freezer for like long-term storage, right? So we ended up like getting the things we had to get. But then I got home and I was like, it felt like Costco was a little frenetic, and I was searching, and a lot of y'all was at Costco this weekend. A lot of y'all were getting a lot of your resources together because you know what's going to happen. You know what's going on. Good job. That's exactly what needs to be happening. People have to be prepared. But I want to get into this new Trump budget that dropped over the weekend or on Friday, because what also happened last week that we did not talk a lot about was that the economy contracted. The economy contracting is not a good thing. We're going to break all of this down, but the economy contracted when what people were predicting was that it was going to expand and grow just at a slightly lower rate. But it did not expand and grow at a slightly lower rate. It shrank. It shrank. And so we got to think about what's happening, because this is all going to play out. We're going to bring back some language we've been talking about. The continuing resolution is back in effect. We're going to talk about what we can predict that's going to be happening later this summer and into the fall. And then we're going to think about what the global economy is going to look like, because y'all got school clothes to be buying. Y'all got stuff to get ready for. So let's just get into it. So I want to set the scene, because this fall, right before we go back to school, there's going to be an increased conversation in Congress. Why? Because Congress has passed remember on Pi Day, remember we were talking about the fact that they were having these budget cut conversations. They were trying to get this budget together. They could not get a budget together. So they did what? They passed a continuing resolution. What is a continuing resolution? A continuing resolution just says we're going to continue paying for government at the current rate that we're paying for government. Now, technically, it wasn't really no continuing resolution, because they added a whole bunch of shit up in it that it was not supposed to do, but whatever. Chuck Schumer, we coming back to you as well. So what has happened is going to continue to place an impact. On Pi Day, because they could not reach a budget, what did they do? They passed another continuing resolution. How long does this continuing resolution go? Anyone? Guess. Not to be in my Ferris Bueller's Day Off mode, but this continuing resolution goes until September 30th. What is happening around September 30th? Oh, your kids have been back in school, because that's right after Labor Day. Your kids are back in school, and people are now thinking about holiday sales. They're now thinking about Thanksgiving sales, because that's usually when people start going into it's time to buy Christmas gifts. All right. Now, Donald Trump then already said when he had this interview with Kristen Welker over the weekend, what did he say? He said, your kids don't need all them dolls. Which is actually true. Your kids don't need all them dolls, but not for the reasons Donald Trump is saying it. Donald Trump was like, your kids don't need all them dolls. Instead of like $30, $40, they could do two. You don't need, 250 pencils. He literally said that they don't need 250 pencils. They could do 5. They only need 5 pencils. That's what y'all's man said that y'all needed for school supplies. So don't worry about no book bags and backpacks. They don't need no books. They could just vibe it out with the teacher. Who needs to learn things? That's basically his approach to the economy today. So somebody called him $2 Donnie. That's funny. That is funny. Shout out to the YouTube chat for that. But so this is the scene as we're going into the fall, because remember, before we send our kids to school, we got to do what? Back to school clothes shopping. We got to get school supplies, because these little boogers don't stay the same size as they were. They're going to grow. They're going to expand. They make us proud. They make our hearts swell. But we are all going to be planning to get our children ready at about the same time that Congress is going to be figuring out what to do with this continuing resolution, which expires when? September 30th. So I want to explain some concepts really quickly. There's this notion called hyperinflation, right? And this is all from Investopedia.com. I'm not giving y'all nothing Lurie just made up out of her head. I do my research. I provide resources that everybody can read. They are accessible. You can find this online for free. Investopedia.com introduced a term called hyperinflation, or I should say I'm going to introduce a term called hyperinflation that we have not necessarily focused on this show. Hyperinflation is a phrase that is used to describe and measure rapid, excessive, and out of control price increases. So whenever things go way up, like how eggs were like going way, way, way up, super expensive, like out of control, couldn't even measure it. It was that ridiculous. That is an example of hyperinflation. Regular inflation is just measuring the pace of rising prices. So inflation would say, well, if prices are rising at the rate of 2% each year, our inflation rate is at 2% each year. I'm being very, very general right now. This is not an economics 101. This is like rudimentary type stuff, just so we're all on the same page, because our elected officials are using these terms and they about to screw with our money. So we need to understand what's happening. So So inflation is just measuring the general rate at which prices rise. Hyperinflation, when it's out of control, price rises. It's absolutely ridiculous. You cannot get a handle on it. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of logical reasons that we can place on it. It's something drastic has happened. It's not like a general part of our process. It's been something drastic. Keep that in the back of your mind as I explain everything that we're about to get to right now. One of the folks that I follow on Twitter, Miss Kwani18, she explained the problem of hyperinflation this way. And she uses the example of buying food in America as as an example for how she can explain this concept. She said the following. Now, I understand why Trump is so desperate for Xi, that's President Xi Jinping of China, to pick up that phone. Hyperinflation is not going to hit only for consumer products, but for food as well. Think about this. We've been talking about price increases as it pertains to eggs, yes, but we've really been talking about price increases as it pertains to things that we buy, products that we buy. It's the food that I'm actually beginning to become more concerned about. She says the following. China has less arable land, meaning less land that you can actually farm than the US, but food is not as expensive in China. Food is way less expensive in China than it is here, even though here in America, we have way more land for farming, which is weird to me considering how large China is. Whatever, we'll save that for another conversation. She says, yet in the United States, prices keep going up and up and up. How is it that in China, food is cheap, while in agriculturally bountiful United States, it's expensive? Most meat is expensive in the United States. And she says, why? With all the agricultural surplus in the United States, feeding your livestock shouldn't be a problem. Meaning basically y'all got all the cows and the beef in the world. Like, why is your meat so expensive? You got all this land to farm. Why is your groceries so expensive? She says, this is the reason, the answer to that question, why is our food so expensive to eat, to grow, to consume? She says the answer to that question is also the reason why the United States will never get manufacturing back. It's capitalism. U.S. capitalism, she says, demands money be made at every opportunity, every step of the way. And if everyone is trying to squeeze in every penny they can to profit, nothing is cheap, which is why here in America, they will throw away food at the end of the day instead of giving it to homeless people who are hungry. They would rather throw food in the garbage. And in some states, you are required to throw your food in the garbage and not give it away to people who need it because it's against the profit model. She goes on to say, Visa and MasterCard, for example, can't really operate in China the way they do here because it would add transaction fees where they don't have any. And the American capitalist system is essentially pricing itself out of competition. Now she says, here's the kicker. And here's why all of this connected with Trump's skinny budget, with the tariffs and all of it comes together. She said the Chinese market is now closed to U.S. farmers, meaning the farmers here in this country used to grow an abundance of food and they would send a lot of that food overseas. They would sell it in other markets in addition to selling it here. But the markets in China are now closed to U.S. farmers. But the farmers are still going to have to sell their goods, which means they're going to have to dump it here in America because also, in addition to the fact that the other countries are now closing their shores to our products coming in, our products have a lot of chemicals in them that other countries don't want to eat and have banned and have made illegal for their countries or to be produced within their country. So a lot of our meat has pesticides in it that other countries ain't going to let in. A lot of our products, our milk has a lot of pesticides and chemicals in it that other countries don't allow in. So farmers here are going to have to find a place to sell their products now that the product markets are no longer available to them internationally. She says, as a result, they're going to dump those products here in America, but they're going to have to jack up the prices to take advantage of the fact or to make up for the fact that Chinese people ain't no longer buying their food. In addition to the fact that we're about to lose out on fertilizers because China is, quote, the world's largest producer of fertilizer. She says, if tariffs hold for 6 more months, we will see catastrophic hyperinflation and scarcity for U.S. consumers. And Xi Jinping, the president of China, is just waiting Trump out. Won't pick up the phone until the store shelves in the U.S. go empty and inflation spikes. And China has already said, we're not going to have no conversation until you get rid of these tariffs. We ain't got no time to be messing with you, Trump. You a hoe-ass hoe, and we don't like how you roll. And so the rest of the world is like, what we're not doing is this. Japan is like, this is ridiculous. We out. We tried to deal with y'all. Y'all ain't got nothing planned. You ain't got no vision. You ain't got no goals. You ain't got no intelligence. We out. We got to go. So all of that is happening. At the same time, we find out that on Wednesday, the economy here contracted, did not expand and grow, but shrank 0.3%. It's a big freaking deal. And Donald Trump drops the new Trump skinny budget on Friday. New budget, who this? According to Politico, Donald Trump is now seeking, quote, massive, unprecedented funding cuts across the federal government, unveiling a budget blueprint that asks Congress to slash these programs by more than $163 billion. $163 billion worth of cuts. Now, we haven't even talked about the 800 and some odd million dollars to Medicaid. We haven't talked about the fact that once they cut Medicaid and Medicare, 60 to 70% of the nursing homes in this country may face struggles staying open because the patients who are in these nursing homes rely on Medicaid and Medicare upwards of 60%. So I don't know who's taking care of your grandma and your grandpapa right now, but somebody in your household better figure out what happens, because in addition to that, once they do cut Medicaid and Medicare and there is no more funding for your elders to stay in a nursing home, and again, we should have conversations about why some people put their families in homes. I'm not talking about those of you who have dementia and you're dealing with issues that are physically impossible for you to deal with. I'm talking about those of you who send your people to a home as a cultural practice. There's something you got to unpack. But now them people may be coming home. And even if they don't come home, if they're staying in these nursing homes, guess what happens in most states? In most states, if your loved one is in a nursing home and they do not have enough money to pay for the nursing home, you as the next of kin are going to find your paychecks decreased because they will garnish your checks. They will take money out of your account to pay for your loved one. It's called filial care. I can't remember the exact name of it, but check your state and find out what happens if your loved one runs out of Medicaid and Medicare and they're in a home right now. Who online for that bill? Hoppo, who this woman? That's what you're going to have to figure out. Who this family member that's going to be paying for these bills, because somebody's going to have to pay for it. The proposal that they released on Friday, quote, pressures lawmakers to cut out more than 20% from the federal coffers. This is 20% on top of the amount of money that DOJ has cut by firing people from these agencies and dismantling these agencies. This is an additional 20% on top of all of that. Now, often Congress will do what they want to do when it comes to the budget. The White House will suggest some things and Congress is like, yes, son, what we ain't doing is that. But it's Donald Trump. And these people have already shown that they are more scared of Donald Trump than they are scared of their own voters. According to Tom Cole, who is the House Appropriations Chair, he says, look, we're supportive of this administration, what it's trying to do, but with all due respect to anybody, I think the members have a better understanding of what can pass and what can't than the executive branch does. Setting us up for a fight. It's not just going to be between the Democrats and the Republicans. It's also going to be a fight between the Republicans and the Republican president, because the Republicans want to make all these cuts so that they can make those tax cuts permanent for the billionaires and the millionaires. But the Republicans do not want to do it the way Trump is trying to do it. And the Democrats, this is where y'all come in. This is where the Democrats come in. Now, I have never been accused of believing that the Democrats were ever going to lead us to Black liberation, because they cannot. They will not. They shall not. That is our responsibility. But the Democrats, y'all are on some real pressure right now, because it's not just the Republicans who are very nervous about all of this happening over the summer, when what else is happening? Oh, right. All of us are going to be very budget conscious, thinking about our kids, thinking about these student loans. Y'all student loan payments, did they start today? Because today is the day. Remember, May 5th. It ain't just Cinco de Mayo and cha-cha-cha-cha-cha. It's also going to be student repayment day. So all of this is happening at the same damn time. The Democrats are aware that their Republicans are going to have to finalize this budget before September 30th, which means conversations about what should be cut, what should not be cut is going to be happening between now and then. Now, Chuck Schumer done re-entered the chat. And Chuck Schumer said on Friday, Democrats are going to fight this heartless budget with everything we've got. It's a betrayal of the working people from a morally bankrupt president. Now, Chuck, we don't believe you. You need more people because you bitched out the last time. You did not, and you are my senator, and I actually voted for you because you were better than the alternative, but you bitched out the last time, and we seen what you did. And so we don't believe you. You gonna need more people, and Democrats in the House, Hakeem, brother, good luck to the minority leader. But right now, we saw how you were able to hold your caucus in line. I don't know what y'all gonna do to pressure the Democrats in the Senate, but y'all gonna have to figure it out, which means we got to figure it out, because we don't have money to be paying hand over fist for elongated muskrat and all the other billionaire bros, particularly the South African apartheid billionaire bros who decided to export that South African apartheid mentality into these United States. We ain't got time to be paying for your little penis rockets to be blowing up in the sky. So here's the assignment that all of us have to participate in. You got to call your congressperson. You got one of them. You got to call your senator. You got two of those. Every single person needs to be calling. In fact, call every day. You heading out to lunch, you place your order for what you're going to pick up the phone and call your elected official. And you know you should be able to do that because your elected official's phone number information should be in your phone, because that's what we decided when we first started the show 4 years ago. You need to also use the 5 Calls app and tell them to vote no. The 5 Calls app. It allows you to connect with all your electeds like in a snap. It's super quick, super dope, and it's very important that you are using every single opportunity that you have. This budget that the Republicans are going to be forced to pass under Donald Trump, because they can't grow a spine or a pair of anything else. Ovaries, be they ovaries or balls, to have a level of strength in this effort. But this budget is calling for cuts to environmental protection programs, energy programs, education programs, foreign aid programs, And these budget cuts will hit in October. The fiscal year starts in October. So you got to call your people. You got to show up at the offices, but Black people don't be at them rallies. I see it again. Out of all the rallies and the protests that's been happening, the only people getting arrested is the Black people. What do y'all not understand? This ain't our particular version of the fight. Let them white people, let the righteous white just go out to the rallies. You do the other stuff. Stop acting like you got to be everywhere. That's why you were in jail and had to have a bail fund collected for you. Stay away from them people's fights. Stay in the fight that is for us. The lower spending targets, according to the report, also mean far-reaching changes to domestic programs, foreign aid. Again, EPA, which Donald Trump calls environmental justice. So that's got to go because it sounds like justice and it sounds like something racial. They're also talking about shuttering those two agencies, the main agencies that were investigating elongated muskrat. They would slash funding for Department of Housing and Urban Development by more than 40%. 40%. All of y'all with Section 8 family members, all of y'all with housing voucher family members, you better pay attention because Cousin Pookie and them coming to your house. They coming to your house because ain't gonna be no place else for them to stay, especially if they get rid of federal funded housing, public housing projects and convert them into condos, which is something we've already seen in the great city of New York. This is a reality that we are going to have to be intimately involved in, proactively engaged in, because these people are coming for your money. They're coming for your money because they would rather they have it than you. 866, I can't get about the number. We got to go to commercial break. Anyway, it's important. 866-801-8255, 866-801-TALK is the number. We got to go to commercial break. On the other side of it, our friends from the Politics of Black Beauty are going to be joining us to talk about the latest and greatest effort to ensure that Black people do not have access to an equitable marketplace as it pertains to where we can show up in Black bodies without punishment. Lots to get to, but here's the summation. If you too long TLDR, here's the shorter version. Call your elected officials. Tell them to vote no. And go get you some rice and some beans and some flour and some sugar and get you a deep freezer if you can. Buy it collectively. Get one for the block. Have it, whatever you got to do. Stock up on your stuff because these people ain't playing. We got to go to commercial break. Much more to come on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show. We'll be right back after this.